Okay, now we need to talk about the word negation. Negation means not something. So negation means not P or not Q. And we use this little curly Q symbol right here to say negation, or to say to negate something. So this is negate P. So for example, if I said I'm hungry, the negation of I'm hungry would be I'm not hungry. Okay? If I said I'm not tall, the negation of that would be I'm tall, because it's the opposite of it. Okay? Now, we've talked about a conditional statement. In a conditional statement, it can be written if P, then Q. This right here, correct? Now we're going to talk about three other statements that are connected to conditional statements. One is called the converse. Now the converse, basically, we switch the P and Q. We switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. That's what a converse is. Okay? We say a converse is if Q, then P. Then we have an inverse. An inverse is when you negate the original statement. That means we say the opposite of it. So it would be if not P, then not Q. Then we have contrapositives. Now contrapositives are when we say we flip it, the Q and P, and we negate it. So it would be if not Q, then not P. Okay? So a conditional statement is if P, then Q. A converse is if Q, then P. An inverse is if not P, then not Q. And a contrapositive is if not Q, then not P. Now remember, when we're discussing the contrapositive, the inverse, and the converse, they are all referring back to the conditional statement. Okay, so let's look at this right here. Now it says, write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive of the conditional statement. And then it says to use the science fact to find the truth value of each. So here is our conditional statement. If an animal is an adult insect, then it has 6 legs. Now first of all, what is the hypothesis? An animal is an adult insect. What's the conclusion? It has 6 legs. Now we have this science fact, we will be coming back to this. But first of all, let's find the truth value of this conditional statement. It says adult insects have 6 legs. No other animals have 6 legs. So let's look. If an animal is an adult insect, then it has 6 legs. That is a true statement. Okay? Now, the converse. Oh, let me back it up. The converse means we're going to switch this it has 6 legs and this if an animal is an adult insect. But remember, we can't say it without having something to refer it to. So what is it? It is an animal. So our new converse should be if an animal has 6 legs. See? Comes from right there. Then it is an adult insect. See? That's the hypothesis in our original statement. Okay? Since no other animals have 6 legs, the converse is true. The inverse. Oh, let me back it up again. I'm getting ahead of myself. Now remember, the inverse is when we negate it. We say if not P, then not Q. So go back to our original. If an animal does not or is not an adult insect, then it does not have 6 legs. Let's see what they wrote. If an animal is not an adult insect, then it does not have 6 legs. Okay? So, is that going to be a true or false conditional statement? Well, no other animals have 6 legs, so the inverse, that should say the inverse. The inverse is also true. Okay? Oh, I keep getting ahead of myself. I'm clicking too quick. Now, the contrapositive. Remember, that's when we flip it and we say it's the negation of it. So we'd say if not Q, then not P. So we're flipping it has 6 legs over here, but we're also saying that it doesn't have 6 legs. So it's going to be if an animal does not have 6 legs, then it is not an adult insect. Okay, and adult adult insects must have 6 legs, so the contrapositive is true. In this case, all 4 statements are true, but that doesn't always happen. Okay, so we're going to look at a converse, an inverse, and a contrapositive of a conditional statement. Here's it is. If an animal is a cat, then it has 4 paws. Find the truth value of each. Now, before we get into this, we are not talking about the cats that got run over and had to have their paw amputated. We're talking about normal, naturally born cats that do not have a birth defect. Normal, naturally born cats do have 4 paws. Okay? So, our conditional statement is if an animal is a cat, then it has 4 paws. That's a true conditional statement. Okay? Our hypothesis is an animal is a cat. Our conclusion is it has 4 paws. If we were to write the converse of that, remember the converse is we switch the P and Q. If we switch the P and Q, this is going to be over here, and this is going to be over here. So, here's our conditional. Here's our converse. If an animal has 4 paws, remember this is coming from here, then it is a cat. That's coming from there. We switch the P and Q. There are, however, animals that have 4 paws that are not cats. So this converse is false. Even though the conditional was true, the converse is false. Now let's talk about the inverse. Remember, the inverse is when we say if not P, then not Q. So in this case, we would say if an animal is not a cat, then it doesn't have 4 paws. So if an animal is not a cat, then it does not have 4 paws. Now let's think about that. Are there animals with 4 paws that are not cats? You bet. This is a false inverse. Okay? And then our contrapositive is if not P, then not Q. Oh, I'm sorry. If not Q, then not P. If not Q, then not P. That's the contrapositive. So we're going to switch these and say not. So if the animal does not have 4 paws, then the animal is not a cat. If an animal does not have 4 paws, then it is not a cat. And that's a true conditional statement. Okay. Now, statements that have the same truth value are called logically equivalent. A conditional and its contrapositive are always logically equivalent, and so are the converse and inverse. So the conditional statement and the contrapositive will always have the same truth value. The converse and the inverse will always have the same truth value. And one last thing, a logical equivalence of a conditional and its contrapositive is known as the law of contrapositive, and that's really not something you need to know. This is the end of conditional statements.